Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma. I'm Kisma and I'm so excited for today's episode. It's all about social media and blogging with the fabulous Peg Fitzpatrick. Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and Kisma, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set.
So hey there, Nick. How are you?
I'm fantastic, Kisma. How are you?
I'm good. How's your week been going?
The week has been busy.
Yeah, it's only Tuesday, by the way, dude.
It's almost December, and 2017 is almost over, and it's like, wow, like this is.
Are you going into the non-existent future?
I am a little bit.
Yeah,
but in a positive way. And I'm also going into the past is a little bit of a reflection of like, wow, like how did this happen? And then the future that's coming, which is exciting as well.
That's kind of cool. I mean, if you could share a bit, because we talk a lot about doing one's best to stay out of the past, out of the future, and then the present, but it sounds like you purposefully went into the past.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's value in doing that. You know, it's not like, we do live in a world that has time.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And the value is really simple for me. Is just like, wow. Every once in a while, I think it's just so easy to get so caught up in the moment and in everything that's happening, and then all of a sudden you look around and you're like, whoa, like how the heck did I get here? And what's cool about that is like oftentimes it's, if you're doing the right things and keeping yourself on track, you look around and you're like, wow, like how did I get here? Rather than like, ooh, like how did I get, So, and it was just a quick reflection on like, oh, like, wow, like this has been a really, extraordinary year in a lot of ways. And then as I'm looking ahead, last year I did a forgiveness at the beginning of 2017. I did like a week of this forgiveness exercise. And as I was doing it last year, I thought, man, that's silly. Like you should be doing this in December. So that's exactly what I'm doing. And that's what I mean as far as looking ahead of like, oh man, it's time to let go. It's really time to make some space and have just a, beautiful holiday season, but also letting go of a lot to get into
That's
2000.
cool. And I saw you did a Facebook Live today on is it a forgiveness challenge or are you just telling people what you're doing?
Challenge is like a weird word for
forgiveness, isn't it?
But yes, it is that.
I'm going to forgive.
I'm going to forgive. I'm going to be the best forgiver ever. No, not. I mean, but yeah, it's like that. Yeah. It's kind of like that. Cool. So I'm super excited to talk today with our guest. And
should I tell our audience a bit about her? So. Oh, we are excited for this gorgeous human. Peg Fitzpatrick is an author. She's a social media strategist and expert. And she's a highly popular blogger writing on her own website, which I must insert here is the most beautiful website I've ever seen, and across the web. Peg has spearheaded successful social media campaigns for companies such as Adobe, Motorola, Audi, Google, and Virgin, as well as having been a brand ambassador for Kimpton Hotels. Like, do you love that? Who doesn't love a Kimpton Hotel?
That's amazing.
TJ Maxx, been there a lot, and Adobe. And Peg co-authored The Art of Social Media, Power Tips for Power Users with Guy Kawasaki. And Guy teamed up with Peg because he believes, and I have heard him say this, and I'll be talking to Peg about it, he believes Peg is the best social media person he's ever met. So with that, welcome the fabulous Peg Fitzpatrick. How are you?
Wow, what a great intro. Thank you for liking my blog. I made my blog myself, and I have to say, like, I really love it. And I think when you get to a point, it's important for you to like your blog a lot because you go there more than anyone else.
Yeah. I think this is kicking it off because when I was looking at it, I mean, I've been on your blog many times. And I said to Nick, you got to look, like it's the most beautiful blog ever. And you were quite taken with it.
I was like, wow, this is gorgeous. It's really beautiful.
So
I think it represents who I am too, which is really, really important. When people meet me at a conference or an event or something, they say, I love your blog. It really speaks to me. Like it tells me who you are and it shows your personality and it's colors I like and photos I like. It's really important that it kind of like expresses who you are, because you're not there to say, hi, I'm Peg. Like, click on this article, read about Pinterest. Like, you kind of have to let that do it for you. And that is hard. It's hard to create something that really expresses all those things.
Yeah.
And you did a fantastic job. I mean, because it's funny, unprompted, that was actually one of the first things that I thought was like, wow, I get such a great feel. I almost feel like I'm meeting you in person, you know, as far as the design and everything. Like it seems like the design is almost like the outfit that you would wear, you know, if you're going to like put a business card out, like here's the outfit you're wearing while you're handing it to them, you know?
And that is really important. And the thing is, it's not a custom site. I wish it was 100% custom, but you can take a really great template and change everything in it to make it fit you. That's really important. It doesn't have to cost zillions of dollars. Mine did not cost a lot of money. I just worked on a lot, and it's WordPress. So, you know, it's easy for people to learn how to do it. People get really stuck and they think, well, I couldn't possibly do that, but it's honestly not that hard. And if you get stuck, I don't do like the really back end developing stuff, like back in the way back part of the blog. I don't do that stuff, but I do the things like all that you can do right in your WordPress template. It's not that hard. And I think, you know, the first thing I did was I found a photo that I really liked, and then I made a secret Pinterest board. If you read my blog at all, you'll know I'm obsessed with Pinterest. And I made a secret board, and I just pinned a whole bunch of things that I liked, which is a great place for people to start if they're thinking, well, I might like to have a website, but I don't know what it would look like. Just pin things that you love, pin colors that you love, pin things that you love. I don't know if you guys ever watched Trading Spaces when that was on a long time ago. But Genevieve Gorder, one of the designers on there, used to use like pieces of jewelry and pieces of outfits and things that people really love to design their whole room. Because if you wear jewelry, it's close to you. It's something that's personal and you love it. So you think of ways that you can find that personal element and then like build it out into everything else.
Oh, that is so cool. I love it.
That makes sense.
It totally does. And my first question really for you is, did you begin this career of social media kind of being this beautiful human floating around the web by designing blogs, or websites, or this was just something you did for yourself?
I actually did do it for clients a little bit, but it's hard. It's hard. Like it's not like my favorite thing to do, just to be in there and have like not that much human interaction. But that being said, I do love the websites I made for other people too.
Okay.
I really am a marketer. I love marketing and writing. I love social media. I'm a people person. So I do love more of a forward facing, like talking to people. Like people are always like, how can you engage on Instagram so much? I'm like, I feel like I have to. I was that person in high school that like had to say hi to everybody in the hall. Like, hey, like I was student council girl. It's just, and I feel like social media is like just an extension of like regular me.
Right. It's the extension to your book.
Say hi to y'all in the hall.
Yeah. And for those of you that haven't been on Peg's Instagram, you must. And of course we'll have links in the bio, but I think it's just your name, right? Peg Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything is my name, Peg Fitzpatrick.
It's so smart, right?
Go into a branding tip
right.
for people to find you, right? Use your name.
Exactly. And that is something you do on Instagram. I've been following you for a while, and you have a voice, or maybe it's the nuance in your voice that does make us feel like you're speaking directly to me. And what is that an intention that you hold when you start putting a post, or is it just that you're not layering stuff with, what we see out in the realms that can feel like manipulation? You're just being real. Like, do you think that? I mean, that's the sense I get, but I also feel like you're speaking right to me.
I am. I'm speaking right to you.
Right now you are, for sure.
Right. But I think that's the way I do approach all my social media, is that I want it to be me. I always want people like I said, if you meet me at a conference or anywhere else, I would think people would be like, oh my gosh, people always tell me like, you're just like your social media, or you just like you tweet, or you're just like you write. Like, I want it to be me. It is me. So, some people move out to where they get to a certain point and then they hire people to do all of their stuff. And you can see this big switch of like the personal stuff to then all of a sudden it's someone else picking the images and writing the text, and it just has a different feel. And I do all my own stuff. One of my daughters right now is helping me do some things, but like I write all my own things. I make all my own graphics. It's all like personal hands-on touch for me. And it is my voice. In Instagram in particular, I always, I teach people how to plan ahead and do a month of content out, but I typically, for me, I'm thinking really like, what is the purpose of this Instagram post? Like, is it Monday? Is it a motivational Monday post? I like to post things that, like this was a tough Monday. Let's face it. After Thanksgiving, everybody ate too much and it was like a lot of people time. And, it's a holiday, but it's not relaxing because you're with people like way more than usual.
Right.
And so then you're like, you got to get back to work. It's like, I'm thinking, what would people like to see? I'm always thinking like, what is, what will help someone get through the day? Like what post? And I can't remember what I posted, but I know I'm going to look at it quick. I know I posted a Monday thing because I was like, that's how I was feeling. I feel like some people are feeling the same as me. I posted a grateful heart as a magnet for miracles because that was like just something that I found when I was thinking about what to post. And I feel like that's like the post-Thanksgiving message, right?
Yeah. I saw it. It was,
and then what do we do with it?
Right. It was so great. It was so perfect, simple, direct, and really perfect. I want to come back to this, what I see as an amazing obsession we have with visual right now. But first talk about the first time I heard about you and saw you. I was at Social Media Examiner, and Peg, I want to say it was 2 years ago.
At the conference?
Yeah, it was here in San Diego. Guy Kawasaki was speaking.
Yeah.
And I think I did I don't know if he had a breakout, but a family member, there's some contacts and I wanted to see him and I've always loved him. Like I've just been following him and he gave a great talk and he had that stuff about the minimum slides, I forget what it is, but like he was really stern about that. And then he just pointed back at you and said basically what your bio is like, you're the best social media person out there. And I remember the entire room turned and stared at you and you were just like, hi.
I know. I was like, oh, that's not awkward at all. He's funny. He's the best speaker. He's so personable and just so funny. I think I may have made the slides for that one.
Oh, sometimes awesome.
Sometimes he makes the slides. If they're really awesome, then I made them.
Right.
He likes to make his all black and white. I'm like, you need some images in there.
Yeah, put a little gold on there. But so when did that relationship start with you and Guy?
Oh, we're almost at the 5-year mark for working together. It was like 6 years ago. And I was doing a book club. I decided I was going to do a book club online. And it was when Twitter chats were brand new. And I wanted to do a book club because I love reading so much. And I found that people that like social media like to read a lot. There was like this really cool, I was like, oh my gosh, people who will read books with me and we can talk about them online. So I had this vision of like doing a Twitter chat and picking a book and then everybody would read it and then we would talk about it. That was my initial plan. And I tweeted, my first tweet was like saying, I'm going to do this, not my first tweet ever, but my first tweet for book club was saying that I was going to read Enchantment by Guy Kawasaki. And I had like maybe 1,100 followers. And Guy had like 750,000 followers. And Twitter was his main platform at that time. It was before Google+. So he saw my tweet saying that I was going to do a book club. And he tweeted me back in like a half hour and said, hey, I'd love to be on your book club. And I was like, oh my gosh, because of course I knew who he was. And I was reading the book and I loved it. And I was like, oh my gosh, authors will talk to you on Twitter. It was like amazing. So I like had my fangirl moment like everyone else, like when someone tweets you back that's like famous. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I tweeted him back and then we started the email conversation. So he was my first guest on my first Twitter chat and it trended on Twitter above the Tony Awards because it was so people were like so excited to have this conversation with him. So it kind of, so book club ended up being like me interviewing authors. So I met all these amazing authors that are all speakers at Social Media Marketing World. And it was before I had been myself. So I've interviewed Guy, I've interviewed like Mark Schaefer and Ann Hanley and just all these, huge, awesome authors. So then when I went to my first Social Media Marketing World, I knew all the authors. Isn't that funny?
That is so great.
It wasn't my plan. It was like, I just did I follow my gut on things, and it seems like I choose the right things. Knock on wood, I just seem to choose the right things. Like people would always give you all these rules for blogging, like you have to do this, you have to do that. And I always said, you know what? I'm not writing for the Google algorithms. I'm writing for people. I want people to come to my blog and read it and really be interested. And then, 2 years later, Google comes out and says, don't do that. We want you to write like you're writing for humans. And I was like, all right. So really go with your gut. That's one of the things about blogging is there's not rules. People can't say do this, or social media. There's no one right way to do everything in the world. There's just people giving it the best guesses on how to do things. And sometimes people have more best guesses than other people.
Right.
But people get so intimidated and they feel like, I don't want to start a blog because there's so many other blogs and they're better. Or maybe they would go to my blog and be like, hers is awesome. I could never make one like that. I never want people to feel like that. My thing is, I always want people to feel like if I can do it, you can do it too. It's not, nothing is so hard that you can't learn to do it yourself in blogging and social media. It's getting more challenging for sure on social media as we go on, Facebook ads. And when you go way in the back end of things, it is more complicated than 7 years ago when I started. But there's also a lot more people teaching how to do things. So in some ways, it's easier if you want to look at it from the bright side, which I always like to do.
I could tell that about you just from looking at your blog.
Hey, that's awesome. But I do want people to think that, I don't want someone else to feel like, well, I don't want to try Instagram because there's already people that have 1 million followers or that have 100,000 followers, or you just have to look at things from I could do that too.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that millennials are awesome with is they're also into it. They don't think more people have been there longer. They're just I can do this too, which is great.
That's a great perspective.
I had a couple of questions. One I wanted to back up to was something that you just said about, well, there's no one right way to do it. And to me, social media in particular is a deeply personal thing. In a certain way, it's just as you express who you are, and what you stand for as a human being into the interwebs. It's actually kind of a profound thing. And I think you're right on with that. And I see a lot of people, trying to follow the formulas and then getting frustrated because maybe it doesn't work the way that they think it's supposed to, or the way that they were told it was supposed to. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about when to break the rules and when not to break the rules in order to find your own way.
Good question.
That's such a good question. There's so many, that's a big answer too. So yeah, I think it's good to start with some guidelines. So in Art of Social Media, we say these are ideas that we've had. And if you come up with a better idea, tell us, let us know if you try something else and it works. We are totally open because we test everything. One great example of that is everybody says that you should never repeat your content that's all the social media quote unquote expert gurus always say, don't repeat anything. But Guy has been doing it since 2008. I searched way back on the web and I found this interview he did in 2008 when he was really into Twitter. He's like, I'm going to try repeating everything and see how it goes. He pushes that to an extreme where he'll push things he'll post them really close together. You don't have to necessarily do that, but if you write this really great blog post and people just tweet it one time, and honestly, that's what most people did for years and years. They wrote a blog post and they tweeted it once. Seriously, no one is ever going to see it.
Right.
You have to repeat your blog content if you want people to see it. Now, the right, I'm saying with air quotes because this is the right way that's worked for me, is that I repeat it, but I mix it in with a lot of other content. I never have people say to me, you're always tweeting just your own content, because I tweet a lot of other articles. I tweet pictures, I tweet quotes, I tweet other things. It's not just my blog content. So I think if people look at my Twitter, they're not just like, wow, she only tweets her own stuff. And a negative example is somebody sent me an email just today saying, hey, I see that we've pinned each other's content a lot. I'd love you to join my Tailwind tribe and share each other's content. So I pulled up her Pinterest account, of course, because I'm not going to just join from some person that I don't know's information. And she has pinned only her own content. I don't see that she's ever pinned any of my content. I don't know if I pinned hers and she found it, but her email was like very disingenuous. And I was like, and then it's like, what do you email back? I was going to say a lot like, really? Like, I don't see that you pinned any of my own thing. And then I was curious to say, like, why are you only pinning your own content? Like, that's such a bad plan.
Yeah.
It just looked really bad. And she is on group boards with other people, but she only pins her own content. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here at all, but she has like 1,100 followers and I have like 30,000 something followers.
Right.
So I would argue that my way works better.
I would argue that too.
I think that's a very fair assessment.
And maybe she hasn't been doing it as long either. Like there's a lot of other factors in there, but I think on any social platform, even though Pinterest is not a social platform, it's a bookmarking site, but still I went to go look, like she said, we've been pinning each other's content. So I was like, oh, that's interesting because her name didn't ring a bell with me at all. Like I really know whose content I pin. So I was just interested to see what she had to say about that. So she obviously saw that I had like more followers, that I was in Tailwind Tribe, like a lot of other things, but her email wasn't really, I don't feel like it was honest.
What do you think has happened?
That's the kind of ways that people see your social media content. Yeah. So if you're, just starting out, like those are rules that you should think about. Like do, the 80-20 rule you hear a lot, like share other people's content 80%, your own 20%. I never actually calculate how much that is, but I always try to make sure that I'm giving much more than I'm taking. I think that's like just a universal rule, right? If we're putting more out into the universe, we want to make sure that we're not just taking. And I think it shows in social media if people are just takers or just trying to sell you something, which, people's Instagram accounts that are always just pushy or just talking about themselves all the time. It's like, who wants to be friends with that person if they're just selling things to you, at you? And I think where you see that on Instagram where people are just pushing their products and
it's like that person at the party who's just talking about themselves. Okay. Like that's nice. You've mentioned this a couple different times. And so I wanted to ask about it a little more directly. But what really stood out to me is you ask yourself that question of like, well, what do people really need to hear? And to me, like that really speaks to an attitude of service that you bring into your entire brand and into your business. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about how you hold that. Do you think about it in those terms, giving versus getting, or if you could just explain a little bit more about like how you relate to service in business and service through what you do?
I really do think about that all the time. I write my blog for people who want to learn how to do social media, because when I want to learn how to do things, there's usually not a how-to for how to do it. So, one example is book marketing. When I started working with Guy at the very beginning, I was helping him work on What the Plus, his book that he wrote about Google Plus. And I did all the research for the book. So when people ask, like, how do you know so much about Google Plus? At one time, I actually read all of the Google Plus help.
Whoa.
Like the whole entire thing. Because I think.
Did you have a bottle of wine next to you when you did that? Because that's pretty intense.
If I thought about what I was doing ahead of time, I probably would have been like, I can't even do this. But I never tell myself I can't do things. I always figure it out. So, then I was going to help with book marketing for his next book. And there was like nothing on how to market a book. With social media, because it was too new. It was very, very new and no one did it. No one knew how to do it. So I just figured out how to do it. Like, how do I use social media? How do I do marketing? If I was going to be interested in an author's book, like what would I want to know? Like, I just figured it all out. And then I share stuff on my blog. I don't always give away 100% of everything. Like, to be fair, we can't give away every single, secret that we have, because But Guy always says, like, you could 100% give it all away because no one would ever, he always says no one would do all the work that I do. Like, even if I say every single step, that people would be like, are you kidding? And maybe that's true. Maybe it's not, but I still keep always a few, you got to keep a couple cards that you don't show, right?
Yes.
But in general, I do. Like, I write to help people learn how to do things because I really feel like I like helping people, and that's what my blog is for. Like, to help people learn how to write a blog, or to learn how to tweet, or to make visuals, because they are so important. And that's just what I like to do. Like, when I was new, there was people who were like, there's already blogs. Why are you bothering? This is like 2011, or, the people who think that they should be able to tell you how you should be able to tweet or post, or, I just think that's all kind of a bunch of malarkey. I really do feel like we can all do our own thing, and it's fine. And that is against what a lot of other people will tell you, but I'm also fine with that.
Yeah, I love that attitude. And here's a question too. It's like, when did, or perhaps the origination of marketing, especially on social media, email, it seems like there's so much marketing that is cloaked in manipulation, right? Or fear marketing, kind of that push rather than compelling marketing. Did you notice that when you became a marketer, or did you just decide this is how I'm doing it? And, head down, went and continued in integrity? Or did you have to make this conscious choice to not do it like everyone else was, or many other people are?
I just don't like that kind of stuff. Like, I love shopping, but I hate being sold to.
Yeah.
When you walk into the store and someone's like, hey, and they run over and they're like, sometimes people do it just right. And they're like, hey, like, we have a sale, 50% off on these things over here. And I'm like, okay, great, thanks. And then if they leave you alone to shop, that's the kind of thing I like. If somebody is all over you every second you're in a store, oh, try this, you should do this. Like, did you see this? Like, I get annoyed. I like to kind of do it. And so I like to do things the way that I like, it's like the do unto others thing. Like, I wrote a blog post a long time ago with the golden rule, like, tweet other people the way you want to be tweeted.
Aw, that's great. We'll have to pull that one up.
Somebody put that up on a church, and the photo has gone viral, but I wrote it like 2011. I wrote that. And so I'm always like conscious of, like, I like to do things the way, like, I'm aware of what other people are doing, like email marketing, for example. You kind of mentioned email. There's a right way to do it, and there's a really in your face pushy way to do it. I never want people to be like, oh my God, I hate her email. Like, she's always selling things. So I'm always thinking about, like, did I have some kind of offer in here, like, and provide value? And the email I sent out before Thanksgiving, I just put a couple of things in there. Like, I put a Christmas Spotify list. I just put a couple of things in there that were like little things that I liked. And I got so many people emailing me saying, thank you so much. That I really loved that. It was so nice that you thought to send that. Like, people felt like the email was for them, not like, here's a blog post, read it. Like, there's a huge difference in those. And I think if you're going to do anything in marketing, email, or social media, you need to think about all those things. If your bottom line is like, how can I get money from people? You're never going to get anywhere. It's just not going to work.
It just feels so constricting.
People are so turned off by that. So that is how I think of it. Like, how can I reach people? And if I'm in someone's email, I'm very aware of the fact that, like, that's a special place to be, right? We don't want to be bombarded. I have very few emails that I like to receive. So I like to give people something that's interesting, fun. And, like, if they want to read my blog post, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know. That is how I think of it. I do try to, I guess I do have just the service mentality.
Yeah, it's great.
It's beautiful. I mean, it's really powerful too. I mean, it's something that we talk about a lot on our podcast, just as far as, like, the spiritual practice. To me, in our podcast, we talk a lot about, like, not just having this esoteric understanding, but it's really like bringing these practices into your everyday life and business. And that attitude of service is something that's really, really key. And I'm so grateful for you to talk about it a little bit, because it's really amazing to see that somebody can be so wonderfully successful and have, that attitude about them. And it's just a beautiful thing to witness. So thank you.
Yeah.
I really do believe that, like, there's a little saying that I don't even know who said it originally, but like your vibe attracts your tribe. I think it's true.
Yes.
I think if you're positive and you're giving, that you attract people like that.
Yeah,
and if you're negative and you troll people, then that's who's in the comments on those things. And I don't have any time for all the negative stuff. I don't like it. I rarely ever have like a rant. I do have like one blog post on my blog that's like a rant, because I always get people stealing my content. And one time I was just really angry about it, and I just sat down and I wrote, and people were like, that was amazing. But it's like not my typical thing. Like, and I wouldn't do it all the time.
Yes.
But sometimes it's good to just express yourself.
Yeah. And then it's actually very pointed and powerful when you do it as a one-off, right? People are definitely going to be like, whoa, Peg, go.
And that's part of who you are too, you know, and it's important to share that. I wanted to ask you about something in particular. I think some of our listeners relate to this, and I'll just use myself as an example. And my habits on social media, where I'm definitely like a more private person in a lot of ways. You know, we have a podcast, and there are some things that would speak to the opposite of that. But in truth, I'm actually quite a private person. And so I find myself sometimes in a little bit of an in and out with it, where, you know, I'll have a burst of creativity and expression, and then I kind of retreat, and then, you know, kind of repeating that cycle. And I guess what I'm curious about is, I know that I'm not alone in that, and if you could have any advice for people out there like that who have trouble with keeping consistent on it, or being, you know, a little worried about you know, what they're going to share, what people are going to think, and if you could, you know, just to get the wheels turning and to get some people started. I mean, I know I'd appreciate it for myself, but I know that I'm not alone in that too, and I'm sure this is something that you've heard before. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the thing is, you should obviously only share what you feel comfortable sharing. And I think that you don't have to share as much as you think you do of your personal self. It doesn't all have to be personal. Like I do share a lot, so people feel like they're like a part of what I'm doing, but I honestly keep a lot of things to myself. I don't share, like my family is hardly ever in my photos because they don't want to be. Like my husband doesn't want to be in my Instagram.
I saw him in one. It was so cute.
Anyway, I'm like, you need to be in every once in a while. It's just so people kind of know you're there. But I also respect the fact that he doesn't want to be, you know, like, and that's okay. So if you're somebody who doesn't want to share a lot about yourself, think about what you can share. Maybe it can just be what you're thinking about, but it doesn't have to be personal. Like, you know, if you look at like my Monday post, you know, think about what's going on the bigger social media picture for the day. So like it's Tuesday, so you could do like a travel Tuesday, and you could just do something like, you know, wouldn't it be great to visit this cool place, and you know, put something, and then, you know, you're talking to people, but you're not sharing like, last Tuesday, I went here and I went there. Like, you don't have to share your personal details, but you can still like engage people in a conversation or start a conversation and use a jumping off point of something that's going on. Like it's after Thanksgiving. It's going to be the beginning of December, which you just kind of said the things that you were talking about there. So, you know, you could even post to like, it's the beginning of December, like, what goals do you have for, you know, this month as we go to the end of the year? So there's ways that you can talk to people without it being sharing your personal stuff. You know what I mean? And I think the key is to balance it out with like using a conversational tone and asking questions to engage people, because like we already talked about a little bit, like it isn't really just about you. Right. So it would be boring if you did say all your own stuff, but you could just ask questions and talk about general things that are going on that engage people. That's kind of what I do with mine. Like I have to like make myself post a photo of me on Instagram. A lot of people post themselves like all the time. I'm always like conscious, like, okay, I haven't posted a photo of me lately. I should probably like remind people who I am, because I don't want to just do pictures of me. Like that's not what I don't feel comfortable with that. And I totally think it's cool that there are people who like the fashion bloggers posting their outfits of the day. Those photos are actually surprisingly hard to take.
I bet.
And I don't have a photographer who's following me around. So, you know, like I just do what I can do. So think about what you can do that works for you and not worry that you're not sharing enough, but share like what you're comfortable with. And then to be consistent with your posting, think about other things that you can share. Like you have a podcast, so you could share a quote from a podcast guest, or you could, even before the podcast comes out, you can say like, I had a great conversation with Kisma yesterday. We were like running through some ideas for our podcast. Do you have anything that you'd like us to talk about? Like you could throw it back out. And that's like just like a teaser, but it's really great to every once in a while just ask people what they'd love to hear from you.
That's so helpful.
Yeah, great advice.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's, it's hard, right? I mean, it's easy and it's hard to post on social media. All you have to do is pick up your phone and write something super smart and funny and add the perfect hashtag with the perfect amount of emojis and hit send, right?
That's it. And then it goes viral and then I'm Insta famous and everything's perfect. Right?
Insta famous. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's actually not easy because it does take a lot. And then we all are up and down. Like sometimes you're busier, sometimes you're just maybe, not having the best day, and you should definitely not post then. So I think taking the pressure off ourselves to make sure everything doesn't have to be 100% perfect. And, that's a big, like, it takes time to get to the place where you feel like comfortable, like with your social media voice, but don't put so much pressure on yourself, Nick. Like it doesn't have to be like people will feel like it's personal if you're sharing like in the same voice and, talking to them, asking them questions, just like in real life at the party. The people who are the most interesting are the ones that ask about you and ask you good questions. So think about that kind of thing where you're mixing in having that conversation with people and learning about people. And then when people respond, it's really people that you know and that you talk to. And that's the best part about Instagram. It's like all people that I talk to all the time. I actually know the people and I go check out their Instagram posts and I comment on their things. So think about that, where you can post things, but don't worry that it has to be like, so personal. I don't think anybody wants to overshare. I mean, there's some people that do just overshare, but in general, I don't think people expect that either.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, or want that.
Right.
You bring back,
feel like we're personally sharing, especially if it's a picture of us. Like,
right.
I get what you're saying, but if you really analyze it, you don't have to overshare. Yeah. You can just share what you feel comfortable with and then let yourself be good with that.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. Like I really appreciate that. I know it's helpful for me, and I hope it'll be helpful for those of them out there who share in that struggle from time to time.
And you can share other people's content too. That's another way that's an easy way. Like you can share somebody else's great content and just put your thoughts on it. Write in the comment, write a description. If you're on Twitter, say like, this article really moved me. I love that they talked about,
right,
clouds or whatever they talked about. Whatever it is, but that's a way of like you're sharing something because you read it and you liked it. So there's different ways to look at it, but all those it doesn't have to be like, your own personal schedule for the day or, overly personal, but it's you personally relating to people. Think about it that way.
That's awesome. It kind of brings us back to that topic. We brushed on it before, but about comparing to others, and feeling like, it's really easy to look at your blog and be like, whoa, like that is gorgeous. And if I were to do a blog, and I know that that's a big part of social media is this kind of self-consciousness about what we're putting out there and things like that. What tips do you have for people to stay out of that sense of comparison and out of that competition type of mode and to just be who they are? I can't remember who said it right now, but comparison is the thief of joy. Helen Keller, I think, said that maybe.
That's a great quote.
That is just true in everything in life. If we compare ourselves to other people all the time, you can never be happy with yourself and who you are and what you do and what you have. If I look at someone else's blog, maybe they have a better about page, or I just try to look at my own stuff and build on improving myself. The only thing that you can ever do is make your own things better. So it's great to get inspiration, but also you don't have to worry that you would absorb other people's stuff too much, that you would lose your own voice. So if you look at other people's stuff too much and get in that like, well, they have this, I can't have that mentality, you're really just going to either freak yourself out from even starting anything, or you could accidentally copy people's stuff and not be original, which is a lot of people when they start, they get quote unquote inspired by people, and instead of really being inspired, they go and they copy all the colors and they try to find the fonts and they try to make it look exactly the same, which is horrible because that's not a representation of them at all. That's a copy of someone else.
Yeah.
So what's the point of that? Marie Forleo, I love her, everything about her. She's copied all the time, but you don't want to be another somebody else. You want to be you. So you really need to just look at, being the best you that you can be and looking at ways that you can build on that. And don't look at everybody else as competition. One of the hashtags I use a lot on Instagram is community over competition, because yes, people may be a direct competitor of you, but they'll be attracted to the right person. And, you just can't think about it all the time. It's just not healthy. I mean, there's billions of people in the world. We're all different and unique. And then also, we're probably all the same in a lot of ways too. Right?
I've seen you use that hashtag. I love it. And now I understand it at a deeper level. Is it okay if we just kind of segue into this hashtag phenomenon? Like maybe the top 3 tips you have for hashtagging on Instagram?
Sure. So sometimes I use hashtags just to kind of express things like community over competition. And the Rising Tide Society is a blog, and they have hashtag. I think that they started community over competition, and that's a perfect example because that's like a movement that they started to help other bloggers and other people be more successful, and that's what they do. So that kind of hashtag is like a community hashtag hub and started by someone else, which a lot of them are. A lot of hashtags are branded hashtags that people, they came up with a movement like Rising Tide Society, and people follow that. Or it could be like A Beautiful Mess is another blog that I love, and they have a whole bunch of hashtags that they use. And then when they want to find content that people in their community tweeted, they can, or shared on Instagram, they can follow it. So hashtags help people, learn more about you. I use them for content and for context. Sometimes it's just the context of things. Sometimes it's the location where I am.
Right.
There's a lot of different ways to use them. And, you can use up to 30 on Instagram. But I have to say, it's really hard to come up with 30 that really fit your content. But I try to be really intentional with my hashtags. And also, you want to make sure that you're not choosing hashtags that are too popular, because then sometimes they can just get a lot of spam in them.
Right.
And Instagram doesn't like the ones that have like spammy content in them. So I do check the hashtags that I use. You can click on them and make sure all of them lead to content that you would want your content to go in with. Like you might think it's a great hashtag, but if you click on it and like some of the girl boss, for example, that's a super popular one, but it's gotten so popular now. There's a lot of spam in there, so it's not a good one to use anymore. Unfortunately,
that's too bad because that is a good one.
It is a good.
Yeah, that's an awesome tip. Is to really make sure that it's aligned with
know your hashtag, people.
Well, because if you're just doing it on the quick, you're like, oh, well, that one's got a ton of it's got a ton of mentions, so of course that's the best one, but it's not necessarily.
And if it has too many, like nobody will see your content
get lost,
at all. The hashtag will just be by. But like there's some that I think even like Dogs of Instagram is one that now has a bunch of spam. Like they get popular and then they get abused. So just make sure when you're using them, click on them. Even if you use it all the time, just click on them every once in a while and make sure that everything, does your content fit in there? Is it what you think the hashtag means? Because that's the thing, is you could think it means one thing and it could be a totally different thing. So you don't want to trouble. It's true. It's a true thing. Like, sometimes the ones I think are more like girl boss kind of things, they may be more fitness or workout. So maybe it's all the super buff people that aren't wearing that many clothes, which is not really like where I want to be. So just there's a lot of different ways to use them. I just try to come up with a couple groups, like literally like 2 or 3 hashtag groups to be consistent with, because you don't really want to be posting that many different types of content anyway.
Right.
So just do some upfront work and check with them all. Make sure they mean what you think they mean, that it's reaching your ideal client, not necessarily all your competition. So if everybody that's commenting on your stuff is people that do exactly what you do, that might not be the right audience.
Right. Got it.
For
Got
you.
it. That's great. Speaking of community, I've noticed, we had Sue B. Zimmerman on the podcast, and I've noticed that you two are friends. Mm-hmm. And is that do you have these friends that you've met online and being social media and blogging experts, and now you have a new sort of family? It seems like a really cool thing, but very interesting because it seems to start in cyberland.
Yeah, actually, most of the people I talk to are all people I met online. All my friends are on the internet somewhere. No one is local, good and bad. But yeah, I have met a lot of people. I met Sue. Oh, I don't even know how I met Sue. It's been so long now. I was working with Canva, and actually, it's funny because Sue and I she lives in Boston, and I live in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. So we're 2 hours away from each other. But we met for the first time in Sydney, Australia.
Oh my gosh! Oh, that's
she
funny.
saw that I was there. From probably Instagram.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is so cute.
So it's funny. So yeah, you can meet great people who are really interested in what you like and what, people that I meet every day, they don't want to talk about social media all the time they don't, or if they do, they just are interested in learning about it, but they just want to pick my brain and be like, so how do I, by the way, I heard blogging was good. Yeah, it's good to have people that do what you do so you can ask questions. I'm good friends with Rebecca Radice. We've been blogging buddies forever. And, when we come up with new stuff or we're working on stuff, we can share it and say what do you think? I'm working on the copy for Rebecca's working on a new class right now. So she asked me to look at it. Let me, what do I think about it? You have to have somebody that you can bounce ideas off of. Otherwise, your stuff can get a little bit stale if it's only you looking at it. Right. You might miss things.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to have your inner trusted circle of friends. And,
I think you definitely need that. And, if you're so worried that everyone in the whole world is going to, copy your stuff, or I don't know, you just can't be that worried about it.
Yeah, no fun. That is no fun.
I mean, Sue and Rebecca and I have been friends forever, and Rebecca and I share each other's content all the time, and we still have totally different followers, which is interesting.
That's cool. That's really neat. Yeah. Well, speaking of blogging, there was something you wanted to share with our listeners. I know we talked about it. Would you talk a bit about the how to blog?
Well, I recently put together information on how to start a blog because that is a question that I get a lot because people just don't know why or how. I actually even had someone ask me they said, well, I'm an artist. Why would anybody want to follow me? And I thought to myself, why would you think anybody wouldn't want to follow her? I love artists, And so she was like, well, what kind of thing could I share? And I gave her a couple of ideas and she was super excited because she just didn't even realize she could share what kind of art supplies she uses or her work process or what things look like on different steps. There's so many different ways that you could share art or whatever it is that you want to write about it. So I tried to put together a couple reasons of why you could start a blog and then just how to do it, just showing the steps of how easy it actually is. And when I was writing it, I actually from start to beginning of getting from the idea for it to getting it actually live, it was less than an hour just doing the little steps that I did. And I was like, wow, I really wish I had that when I started because it's easier than people think it is, even though it can take a lot of time. You could have lots of decisions to make, but just get started. That was kind of where I wanted to go with it. It's not so complicated. And then I gave a couple of examples, which a lot of people don't know, and follow Joanna Gaines from Fixer Upper, but she actually started on a blog. She had a blog that she was writing about just her design. She didn't really think anybody was going to read it, but she was, working on houses with her husband, with her family, and HGTV contacted them and said, hey, we'd like you to be on a TV show. And they didn't even watch TV. They don't even have a TV.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
But it all started because she wanted to just share, what she was doing on her farm.
Right. That is so cool. And I know you mentioned somewhere in this article, if I recall correctly, to have your blog self-hosted. You mentioned a mistake you made early on. Could you speak about that a little bit? That was interesting to me.
Well, the beginning of my mistake was, it wasn't a mistake because I didn't know how to start a blog. So a friend that I was friends with online said, "Oh, I'll do it for you and I'll host it for you." And then I wasn't friends with him after, it was like a couple years later.
Right.
And then I had zero access to it.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I should probably write more about that, but I would feel so bad if the person read it and was like, "Oh gosh, that was me." But that was actually my fault. I just didn't know, I just didn't know even what the hosting part meant. But that's so, and then the other reason for that is if you have a WordPress.com blog, they own it. It's not yours.
Oh, interesting.
And it has that WordPress after it.
Right. So you can have your WordPress and put your blog there, but you want to host it elsewhere.
Right. You want to host it yourself. My friend Kelly Lieberman, who she does Pinchat. She loves Pinterest. She had hers she's not self-hosted. She's on WordPress. And she's not really a blogger. She loves Pinterest, but she had, she caught something on Pinterest really early, and she had a post that literally went viral. It was picked up on Mashable and everywhere. And so she can't even she couldn't even change stuff because everything was there. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, she could I don't know if you can redirect from those to the other ones. Maybe you can redirect, but, and you just can't customize it as much. It's very limited for what you can do. You can't add plugins that customize, and you can only add certain themes. And it's just, I wish I hadn't had that stuff. I mean, everybody starts somewhere.
Right.
So if you did start there and you wanted to move, you can totally do that. But it's just better to start out because it really is the only thing that's really yours on the internet. Our Twitter account isn't ours. Our Instagram account isn't ours.
Interesting.
There are Instagrams and Twitters, Facebooks. We don't own that content. If it closes, look at Vine. Vine closed, and all people, that was their only social platform.
Wow. Yeah. Well, definitely the article is pegfitzpatrick.com/start-blog. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes, but some great tips in there. So I know people will be running to read.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And I so appreciate you just taking all your experience and making it simple and very doable, and taking, one of the biggest things that I really appreciate you sharing is just how to take some of that pressure off of to get it perfect or to get over wrapped up in it rather than just getting out there and being yourself and having some fun with it. Yeah.
Totally.
Definitely. It's more fun that way too, right?
Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Nick looks like he had a weight lifted from his shoulders. Thanks, Peg. Tell us about the book before we sign off so people know how to get the book, the Power Tips, right?
Yep. The Art of Social Media Power Tips for Power Users. Yes. We do have a website that's art.social.
Okay.
And there's a lot of information on there. There's a quiz you can take to see how much you know about social media. I have to check it because I know maybe some of the things have updated. But the book is available everywhere. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all over. If you're an online person, I highly recommend the Kindle version because it links to everything and there's lots of great resources that you can find online.
Okay.
And it's a quick read because we really wanted it to be the power tips. So
great.
I hope that, if you're looking getting started in social media, that it would help you.
Okay, cool. We'll put a link to that as well. And Peg, one question I like to ask our guests, because we don't always have guests on, we feel like it's so special when we do, but is there anything that you desire to do that you've not yet done and you haven't told anybody?
The one thing I haven't really put out there yet is I really someday would like to do a TED Talk.
Oh, I think that's great.
That's awesome.
Yes. TED Talk.
I haven't really talked about it. I did. They do have one locally, which is crazy. And I did contact them, but I haven't really done anything else about it because they were it was right when theirs ended from last year. And they were like, get back to us later. And I was like, okay. But that is something that I would love to do because I think that's kind of it's a milestone.
Yeah. Oh, you would do great. And there's whatever you would speak about. I mean, what's fascinating to me is how social media, in particular, these visuals, right? Pinterest and Instagram, it's just become just a way of life. we've gone like, yes, we write and we type, but people are really drawn with these visuals. And I think there's something to that. I don't know why or how, but it's happening.
Yeah, well, our brain, I mean, it's in every article on visuals, but our brains just process visuals better than they do text.
Yeah.
It's easier. We look at faces and we get expressions. And, there's a big difference between hearing me say something and seeing me say something.
Yeah.
Even from a podcast to like a video, you go from writing to a podcast to a video. When you see someone's face, and even in a podcast, like maybe somebody's seen a lot of my things, but maybe they've never heard what I sound like.
Right.
When you put a voice behind something, it's just a human layer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. Well, before we sign off, any last minute tips or words you have for our listeners?
Don't worry about it being perfect. Just do what you feel comfortable with and enjoy it.
I love that.
We really appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today. And we just so appreciate everything that you've had to share. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks
Thank you for having me.
For sure. And happy holidays to you and your family.
Yay, you too.
Okay. See you soon.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.